Hello, Waterford Wesleyan Church Online. My name is Pastor Matt, the assistant pastor here at Waterford Wesleyan Church. And before we get going into today, I just have one quick announcement. It's really actually a reminder. So pause the video because next week, May 14th, is Mother's Day. Stop, go buy the card you forgot to buy, go get the gift you forgot to buy to celebrate the moms in your life. Whether it's biological, adopted, legal, or otherwise, celebrate the moms in your life. And we are going to be doing that here Sunday, the 14th. Here at Waterford Wesleyan Church, just celebrating the moms in our lives. Again, that's next week. For those of you who have already forgotten since the last time I mentioned it, the 14th, here at Waterford Wesleyan Church and everywhere else, but we're going to be doing it here as well. So, with all that out of the way, here's Pastor Paul.
Monkeys kind of freak me out. My aversion to monkeys began many, many years ago with a little excursion to Six Flags in New Jersey, where they have, or at least then they had, I don't know if they still do, a like safari thing where you drive through this wildland where animals roam free, and that is when my experience with monkeys kind of went downhill. It's called like a safari excursion. I just call it chaos. And so we did this, and I should have known it was going to be a little bit wild when we pulled up to the gate, and there was a sign there that basically said, hey, we're not responsible for anything that happens to your car. If they pull off antennas or rip things apart on your car, well, that's your problem. And I thought to myself, why in the world are we doing this? There's no way I got to get out of this, but we're in a line of cars. And there we were. It's supposed to be fun, but yet I found it terrifying and lawless. So anyway, we're driving through the safari, and first off, it's pretty calm. I mean, there's like a giraffe off in the distance, a hippo in the water over there. And then we get to like Monkey Land, and that's when the wheels come off. And what happens was a few cars ahead of us decided to stop. And to me, that was number one rule. Do not stop under any circumstances, but they did. And then they broke rule number two. I don't know if it was a written rule, but it was my rule. Don't feed those monkeys, but they did. And so there we are in perfect line of cars, in perfect ambush position, and that's exactly what happened. The monkeys came swarming in, and there they are, climbing over cars, pulling off wiper blades, breaking antennas, and then there was a monkey in front of the car sitting on the hood or the roof of the car in front of us, sitting there stoically, and I thought, what in the world is he doing? Well, let me just say he wasn't thinking, because when he got up, he left them a little treasure on the roof of their car. So it's one of those things. It's just anarchy when the monkeys came in. It was unsettling to say the least, and the worst part was I paid admission to do this, and I'm like, what was I thinking? Monkeys are unsettling, especially when they're everywhere and kind of swarming around. Now, I found that it's not just monkeys that are trapped inside of a cage that are unsettling. This is like a problem. I should be old enough to know this by now, but it's fairly new to me. Monkeys are a problem for people that live where monkeys naturally live, meaning like South America or Asia. Monkeys are a problem. Kind of like how squirrels can be irritating for us, monkeys are a problem, but next level. So what they'll do is they'll come into the village and they'll steal your food. Now, you can't just run to the grocery store and buy more, so it is a problem. You may have farmed that or worked really hard to get it, and a monkey comes along and steals it. So some brilliant person came up with a trap to catch the monkeys. And the trap, in Paraguay, they call it a Paraguay monkey trap, but I'm sure they don't call it that in India. But anyway, the trap is very simple. It's just a coconut or some sort of gourd that's hollowed out with a hole in the top, and then it's tied to a tree or kind of bound to the ground somehow. And then what happens is they place a piece of fruit inside the hollowed out coconut or the hollowed out gourd. And then what happens is the monkey puts their hand in there to grab the fruit, and the hole isn't big enough for them to take their hand out while still holding on to the fruit. Here's a picture of a monkey trapped. So here's where the genius comes into play. All the monkey has to do is let go of the fruit and he's free, but they don't. They hold on to the fruit and actually they grip tighter, especially as other monkeys come around. They're certain they're going to steal it, so they hold tighter and tighter to it. And the monkey with their hand inside the coconut will then ultimately be trapped and then captured by a villager, and the villager does whatever the villager does. I'm not going to decide what they do to that monkey, but that's on them. The genius of the trap is this. All the monkey has to do is let go, but they don't. And then it's ultimately their demise. Now, it's easy for me to think and snicker and go, stupid monkey, just let go and you'll be free. But I've realized that that's not just a monkey problem, that's a human problem. There are many things in my life, and my guess is in your life too, that you've held to, that you know are binding you, that you know are trapping you, that you know are ruining your life, but you hold on to them anyway. God knows that we have a proclivity to binding ourselves, to trapping ourselves, to imprisoning ourselves to things that, well, they just don't last. That's why when Jesus, at the early start of his ministry, goes into the temple, opens up the scroll in Isaiah, and he says this, recorded in Luke chapter 4, verses 18 and 19. The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Freedom for the prisoner, to set the oppressed, to set the trapped free. This is Jesus' proclamation. This is what he's come to do. And instinctively, I think we know this. Even his detractors 2,000 years ago knew this. Those that wanted him gone understood this as well as humanity does today. You see, you go back 2,000 years, it's revealed very clearly as Jesus' ministry becomes more and more bold by the day. Not only does he read that in Isaiah, but here later, he raises Lazarus from the dead. He brings a dead man back to life, and that gets everybody's attention. And Lazarus has been raised from the dead, which causes two very different responses, but then also reveals a trap. A trap that people were caught in then, and a trap that you and I can be caught in today. Let me show you what I mean. This is John chapter 11, verses 45 through 53. Now, this is in context of Lazarus just being raised from the dead. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary, had seen what Jesus did, believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. What are we accomplishing, they asked. Here is a man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation. Then one of them, named Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, spoke up. You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it's better for you that one man die for the people than the whole nation perish. He did not say this on his own, but as high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation. And not only for the nation, but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. So from that day on, they plotted to take his life. Some people from this, raising Lazarus from the dead, placed their faith in Jesus, and others went and told the religious leaders what Jesus had done. I think that's kind of interesting, but maybe that's another topic for another day. But it's quite interesting to me that the gathering of the religious leaders, the Sanhedrin, what it reveals about the condition of humanity and the trap that you and I can get caught in today, the one that they were trapped in as well. As I stated before, instinctively, we know that Jesus is not just another person. Even the religious leaders that day understood that. Listen to what they say in verse 47. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called the meeting of the Sanhedrin. What are we accomplishing, they asked. Here is a man performing many signs. Isn't it strange that they acknowledge that Jesus is doing something otherworldly? And yet their response to that is they admit that he's not just another preacher or teacher, but on those grounds, they don't look at him differently. They actually reject him. Why? I mean, what would motivate them to reject Jesus? I mean, they're watching him do things and knowing he's doing things that are otherworldly. Instinctively, they know, just like you and I know, that Jesus is not just another person. Why they reject him is because they're caught in a monkey trap. Look at verse 48, makes that very clear. They say, if we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation. Rome will take away our temple and our nation. They're concerned about things that aren't going to last. The temple won't last, the nation won't last. Either way, those are just temporary things. The things of eternity that Jesus is offering, they're rejecting them, but they're holding tightly, they're squeezing tightly to what isn't going to last. And in that moment, the Sanhedrin decide to hold tightly to the religious norms. That's what they're holding tightly to, and to their nation, which really wasn't much of a nation because they're under the thumb of Rome anyway. They were holding tightly to what they felt brought them some degree of value and identity. And the bait that they grabbed a hold of is what bound them. And in turn, they saw Jesus as someone to be rejected and eliminated, not the person to set them free. That's the crux of it all right there. He's the one that can set them free from the trap, but they're holding tightly to it. So they hold tight to the fruit that binds them, and they're stuck to the tree. They're not going anywhere. And I realize this, nothing has changed in 2,000 years. This is still the human condition. We will still cling to a bait that binds us. We will still cling to a bait that holds us. I mean, your bait may not be holding tightly to a religious norm or maybe even a national identity or anything like that. Your bait may be something else. But remember, Jesus came to set the captives free and the freedom for the prisoners. That's why Jesus says in John 8:36, so if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. free from your Paraguay monkey trap, free from what binds you. You and I know that Jesus is not just another person, another historical figure. We know that he is more than that. He has performed signs in your life. You know that if you've trusted Christ, you know that you are made alive spiritually. You are not the same person you were before, but yet we can still be bound. Maybe we were set free by salvation, but yet we still cling to things that are binding us. In our lives, we may still be bound, not to a temple, not to a national identity. It may be something altogether different. We may be holding tightly to resentment, and we're bound to it. We may be squeezing tight all of our might to the bait of an unbiblical ideology, and we're strapped down. We may refuse to let go of forgiveness, and we're imprisoned. We may cling to money, and we're chained to being dissatisfied. We may grip to lust, and we are stuck to loneliness. We may wrap our arms around things, and we live in emptiness. You see, we're still bound. We may have trusted Jesus, and we discover salvation, but we're still bound by that one last piece of fruit that you won't let go. Jesus offered freedom then to the Sanhedrin. They rejected him. He offers freedom to you today just the same. They were bound, and they knew Jesus was more than just an average person. And we can be bound too and still know that Jesus is more than just an average person. We can have the same response to Jesus where we acknowledge that he saved you, but yet we still hold on to one thing that is binding you. One of the ways that Jesus sets us free is teaching us how to let go of the bait that's holding you. So my question for you is very simple. Will you let go of what has you trapped? It's as simple as letting go and trusting Jesus. Now you could say, well, that's impossible. That's too big. Well, right. Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. That's impossible too. If you trusted Christ as Savior, he's radically changed your life. That's impossible too. But that one last thing that you're holding on to, he can teach you how to let it go. Because the Son has come to set you free. Set the oppressed free, the trapped free. In John 8:36, if the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. And today he's just going to teach you, if you'll trust him, how to let go of the bait that has you trapped. Because once you let go of the fruit, the trap loses all of its power.